Welcome. The Governance and Policy Committee meeting of Wednesday, May 28, 2025 will now come to order. As this is the final governance meeting of the school calendar year, I would like to take a moment to reflect on our team efforts to carry on the important work of the school board. Our work is centered on governance, accountability, and student achievement. Trustees are reminded that as this is a committee meeting, it is the appropriate forum to discuss agenda items prior to their presentation to the full board, as applicable. Following each report, discussion will be open for trustees. I would also like to reaffirm that this committee meeting remains a space where we can share our views and discuss agenda items in a manner that is safe, respectable, and constructive. Let us continue to engage thoughtfully, fostering an environment of collaboration as we work together to serve our students and community. I will now read our land acknowledgement. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississauga of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the draft agenda? Thank you, Trustee Morton. All in favor? Thank you. The agenda is approved. Can I please have a motion to approve the draft minutes of the Governance and Policy Committee meeting of April 30th, 2025? Thank you, Trustee Jackula. All in favor? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Tonight, we will begin with our recommended actions, and we have 3 items coming forward for recommended action. And I'd first like to call on General Counsel Patrick Cotter to present the revised bylaw report.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair Miller. So the report can be found at page 6 of the agenda package and includes the proposed revised bylaw attached as Appendix A. Trustees will recall that the revised bylaws came to this committee at its last meeting. And there were some comments that were made, and based on those comments, I went away and made some further amendments. So propose to go through those tonight, with hopefully without reduplicating effort in terms of what we already discussed last meeting. So the first change is at page 9 of the package, section 2.2.2. We wanted to, I think, clarify that the role of the vice chair, particularly now that we're adding DSTS to the list of obligations. And so we've clarified 2.2.2 to remove the Education Act to the preamble, although it still says consistent with, which I think is fine. Sub I was already added, but based on that addition, I propose to add 2.2.3. The role of the vice chair is to stand in for the chair in the chair's absence in relation to the obligations set out above, except in relation to the chair's obligations on the DSTS Governance Committee. Are there specific provisions in these bylaws for the election of a trustee designate to stand in for the chair on the DSTS Governance Committee? Then the next change is 3.1.1 on page 13 of the package. All of the subparagraphs there are now elect, so that there's consistency of language. Trustee designate language is the same, carried over from the last meeting. The main change that is made and the main discussion that we had at the last meeting was around the establishment of the annual calendar, and which informs the definition of regular meeting for the purposes of mandatory attendance. So I think what had happened was we sort of started at some point with some language around the calendar, and over the last 4 years, it's been amended and sort of pasted on. And by the time we were at the last amendment, it got a little cumbersome. So I went away and redrafted it. So you're basically seeing a new 4.2.4. And a new 4.2.5. Based on the discussions and based on the way this is worded now, I'm proposing that we leave it that it can't be amended unless there's a 2/3 majority vote, because this should be set up now to be pretty solid. The calendar is going to be presented. The board's going to consider all of these issues when the calendar is approved. That's going to set the requirements for attendance for the year, and there should really be no reason to amend it during the year. If there is, of course, there may be some extenuating circumstances, then it can be amended on 2/3 basis. So the new language in 4.2.4 says that the Committee of the Whole shall meet regularly in the first Monday of the month, and that's defined as the Committee of the Whole standing, except as provided below. The board shall approve the annual schedule of regularly scheduled Committee of the Whole meetings at the organizational meeting each year. The calendar will typically not include meetings in July, August, or December. Should the first Monday of the month fall on a statutory civic, school holiday, or on a DDSP recognized protected date of significance, the approved calendar shall schedule the meetings for the Tuesday of the same week or Monday of the following week, or such other date as the day board may deem appropriate when it approves the annual calendar. Now, the September meeting may not be scheduled on the first day of school. So I think that's pretty clear that what's going to come to the board is a calendar that accounts for this. That'll all be taken into account, and the board will approve that calendar. 4.2.5, the board may vary the approved calendar at any time during the year on resolution of a 2/3 majority of the members present and voting. A variance to the approved calendar may only include the removal of a meeting. Additional meetings that may be called throughout the year are not considered to be part of the annual approved calendar of meetings. So in other words, if we need another meeting, nothing stopping the board, obviously, from doing that, be it a special meeting or something else. That's fine, nothing precluding that, but that's not going to count as part of the annually approved calendars of meetings that go towards the mandatory attendance. That way we don't have to worry about how much notice is provided, etc. But obviously it can be varied to remove, because that doesn't impact obligations as to attendance. And then 4.2.6 is the same. So then if we jump down to 5.5.1, virtually mirrored the language for the establishment of board meetings. So it's virtually the same and exactly the same concepts there. The language in 5.7 as to the mandatory attendance is not changed. But obviously that refers back to the regular meetings, and the definition incorporates from the calendar. And I think that is it for those changes. So subject to any questions you may have. Oh, I guess the only other thing that was brought up at the last meeting that I didn't feel like there was sufficient resolution on, so I didn't change it, was there was a discussion about whether the DSCS governance would be 1 or 2 years. I just left it as an annual thing, so that's something I just want to flag that for you in case you still wanted to discuss that tonight. Subject to any questions you may have, that's the report.
Thank you, Council Cotter. Is there a trustee willing to move the recommended motion? And that is on page 47. Trustee Morton?
I'm looking at the motion, the recommended action on page 6. It is recommended that the Governance and Policy Committee approve the revised language of the consolidated bylaws as included in Appendix A, and that the matter proceed to the Board of Trustees for consideration at its next meeting. Yes, I'm willing to move that.
Thank you, Trustee Morton. The item is now open for discussion or any questions from trustees.
Just for the purposes of the transcript, what trustee Morton read was the correct recommended action, but it's not on 47, it's on page 6. 47 was the old one. You were correct, trustee Morton, that's the right recommendation.
Page 6.
There was reference made to 47, which was the old report. It was just included for reference.
I'll now turn to trustee. Okay, let me just adjust that. Go ahead. Trustee Morton. Press it again.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I just have a couple of little questions. Under 4.2.4, that last sentence, the September meeting may not be scheduled on the first day of school. I'm just wondering if the verb is definitive enough. Do we want to say may not, will not, shall not? Are we making it a point that it will not happen on that Tuesday?
I think we could say shall not. Be fine.
Because we are making that a definitive statement.
Yeah, that's fine. Subject to any concerns you may have, we will make the change, provide that it shall not, and the approval, if this gets approved, it'll be on that basis, that amendment.
Thank you. And one further comment, it's simply a typo on page 47, 2.5, DSTS Governance Committee, Chair of Trustee Designate, it should be the Chair or, and then the Director or Designate. So the two ofs should be ors. And yes, I'm kind of picky.
No, that's fair comment. That was sort of a cut and paste from a PDF of the governance bylaws.
Okay.
That got put into the last report.
Okay.
That has no impact on the provisions of the bylaw.
No.
But thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll call on trustee Edwards.
Thank you. Appreciate the rewording of the complex thing. It flows much better. Thank you very much. And I'm just looking at 4.2.6. Again, just a point of clarification for myself, and that the way this reads now is that committee of a whole closed session is basically not considered a regular meeting. So a trustee could miss every one of the closed sessions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
A supplemental comment? My issue with that is that closed sessions are basically used for legal matters, financial matters, labor matters, and that an individual, just a note that an individual that misses a lot of that will miss that information. And therefore, when it comes to, decisions at the table, they would not be privy to the information behind. But just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's a fair point, Trustee Edwards, but I would point out, of course, that the mandatory requirements are only for physical attendance. They could still obviously attend virtually without permission, but that's a fair point.
Are there any further comments or questions from trustees? Okay, seeing none, I'd now like to call the question with your voting cards. Please show yea or nay to the motion. That motion is carried. Thank you. I'll now turn it back over to General Counsel Cotter to present the revised Student Trustees and Student Senate Policy Report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Miller. So the report can be found commencing at page 49 of your agenda package. There's proposed amendments to the Student Trustee and Student Senate Policy for your consideration. The changes really begin in track changes on page 54 of the package. These changes were brought forward at the suggestion of the student trustees And the intention was to bring some clarity to the role, in particular as around student visits and student attendance. So I don't know, Chair Miller, if the student trustees wish to provide any comment before the committee discusses it or not, but they may wish to do so.
Student trustees, would you like to comment? I recognize Kayla.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'd like to take a moment to thank Council Cotter for his assistance, as well as Jillian and Superintendent Bliss for their invaluable support in helping us make these recommended changes to our policy, as outlined in your agenda packages. And on behalf of me and my fellow student trustees, past, present, and future, I want to emphasize how essential the school visits actually are to our role, and these visits actually provide a crucial opportunity to connect directly with the student body, whose voices we are, of course, elected to represent. And this direct engagement ensures that the input we bring forward at the board level is both accurate and timely. And over the past year, we've been able to establish a strong network of student connection and input, and it's been truly remarkable to see the impact of that work. And our goal in formalizing and outlining this practice within the policy is to ensure that future student trustees have the same opportunity to build these meaningful relationships, as well as maintaining a clear student-centered voice in, board discussions as well. So thank you once again for the collaboration and continued support in strengthening student leadership and representation.
Thank you, student trustee Kalahor. Is there a trustee willing to move the recommended action as included in this report? Thank you, trustee Jackula.
Thank you very much. I will move that what we see on page 50, the motion there, it is recommended the Governance and Policy Committee approve the revised student trustees and student senate policy included as Appendix A, and that the matter proceed to the Board of Trustees for consideration at its next meeting.
Thank you, trustee Jackula. The item is now open for discussion or comments from trustees. I'll take trustee Edwards.
Thank you. And appreciate all the input that has been put into the student trustees, basically regulation or bylaw, student senate bylaw. Anyways, I have a couple of questions and some for clarification. I noticed that 4.1, basically we're now electing 2 student trustees and 1 Indigenous student trustee, which I don't know if was in the previous one, but I'm actually pleased that it is there. So that still leaves it's still as 3 trustees, so there's no financial impact as far as I understand that. It's 3 trustees because we're allowed to have 3 student trustees. And 4.13, just a comment. One, I'm not sure what FGM stands for and EAC stands for as far as conferences. So I'm not quite sure what those abbreviations are. So there might I knew AGM was, but I didn't know the other 2. So just wanted some clarification because there is a comment, especially for the Indigenous student trustee, is that the OPSPA holds, the Indigenous Advisory Council holds a meeting with at the same time with the Northern meeting. And I think that that's very beneficial, that if we're having an Indigenous trustee, that also be considered as one of the opportunities, not that they have to go to all of them, but one of the opportunities that they basically will be able to connect specifically with the Indigenous Advisory Committee at the provincial level. So I was just wondering if we could somewhat include that as well. And I don't know if it is I think that maybe they could attend at least 4, but I'm not sure, if you wanted them to attend like 5, because that's a lot. But that is one, I think that is very, very beneficial for our student trustees, Indigenous student trustee. And then I have one, I think that's one other comment. That's all I have as far as comments are concerned. And if anybody could comment on the two abbreviations, and then the fact about the Indigenous Northern Conference. Thanks.
Okay, calling on trustee Kalahor.
Thank you, and through you, I have a couple
Sorry.
of comments.
Point of order, that was for student trustee Kalahor. Did it select you? It was an error. I will call you next, sorry. Okay, so student trustee Kalahor is next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry about that. I'm just responding to Trustee Edwards' comments. And I did want to say thank you very much for highlighting how we do have the mandate for an Indigenous student trustee to be elected moving forward. That is something that a previous Ben last year put in the policy after its creation in order to create a framework for having that obviously implemented in the future. We're not quite there yet. That is still a process that we're working on, but we wanted to have language in the policy so that it is a possibility for us to even do that. And yeah, we're just trying to figure out still what that looks like. So if any trustees also have any input on anything they've seen in any other boards on how election systems work for Indigenous student trustees, that would be really helpful because we are working obviously alongside the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee and Circle as well, because they have to kind of outline that framework. So that is mostly up to them, and I'm sure they could also definitely come up with some language around how they want Indigenous student trustees to attend conferences as well. So that's really great to hear. I didn't know that they do conferences like that, so thank you so much for your comment. And I hope I answered your questions.
If I may respond, Chair Miller, as well. So when this suggested change to the policy came forward with respect to the school visits, et cetera, we obviously were concerned with the language there, and I didn't review the entire policy that was not track changes to ensure that was the accurate policy posted on the website. And I don't think that's the existing language. I know that Ben brought it forward, but I would just have concerns that I don't think we can resolve tonight. So I think my suggestion is we limit the discussion tonight to the amendments around student visits. And what we'll do is we'll confirm sort of the existing language and the history that we had, and we can come back with another report on the Indigenous trustee question, because I do recall that Ben Cameron brought it forward last year. But my memory is that we did not adopt those changes. So I think we need to just park that discussion for tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Morton?
A couple of comments and a question. Firstly, I'm absolutely thrilled that we're having the discussion around that third student trustee being an Indigenous student. Because you know I've talked for a long time about having Northern representation, but if we have an Indigenous student trustee, that's amazing. My other comment is around under 4.11, we talk of grants for student needs. I think that wording needs to change to core education funding. And then my question is around 6.4. You talk about visiting schools, but you don't say, is it all secondary schools? Are we visiting intermediate grades in elementary schools? Could we clarify that? Because I'd love to see you visiting intermediate students. You know that.
Student trustee Kalahor?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Thank you, Trustee Morton, for your comments. I definitely agree. I think it's really great that we do have the framework set in place for an Indigenous student trustee. And we can definitely look at revisiting the policy, as Council Cotter said, and making some adjustments from there. Because, yes, I do think that visiting elementary schools is also a very essential part of our role. And it's something that we haven't looked into doing before. So I think in the future, we wanted to, like I said, kind of leave a lot of doors open and possibilities for us to be able to do that. So absolutely, I think we can go back in and make sure to clarify that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further questions or comments from trustees? Seeing none, I'll now like to call the vote. Can we show our cards in favor of, sorry.
I think,
Oh, sorry, yes.
no, that's okay. Chair
Correction.
Miller, if I might, I think, given the confusion around what's being amended and what ends, I suggest the whole thing come back at another meeting, and we'll clarify what the existing language is and what we actually need to amend and what the board might want to consider amending further.
Thank you for the advisement, Council Cotter. That means we will pursue that at the next agenda setting, okay? All right, we'll move to the next. Okay, we have a further question from Trustee Edwards.
I know, but the actual motion was on the floor, so we should actually make a defer to the next, a motion to defer to the next governance meeting officially, because the motion was on the floor. Yeah, I would like to move the student trustee and student senate policy to defer the decision until the next scheduled governance meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Can we now vote on this motion? The motion is carried. Thank you. I'll now ask Superintendent Heather Mundy to present the revised equitable recruitment policy report.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I'm pleased to have Arlene Walks, our manager for recruitment, here as well this evening to support the report. The purpose of this report is to recommend revisions to the equitable recruitment policy for consideration by the Governance and Policy Committee. The policy was updated to ensure that the language and processes are consistent with the DDSB policies on Indigenous education, human rights, anti-discrimination and anti-racism, and the safe and respectful workplace policies. The key changes to the policy include a commitment to accommodation, awareness of bias and stereotyping, recognition of systemic barriers, genuine and non-discriminatory requirements, so looking at postings in good faith that all of the requirements are bona fide, and that we have a clear conflict of interest process. Upon approval of the revised policy, the framework, so the one that's included in your package, will be updated. So this is the previous framework, and to ensure alignment. Additionally, upon approval of the policy, the equitable recruitment procedure will be approved as it has previously been reviewed by Administrative Council. So therefore, we are recommending that Governance and Policy Committee approve the revised equitable recruitment policy, which is included in this package. We're happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Heather Mundy. Is there a trustee that is willing to move the recommended action as included in this report? Trustee Edwards, thank you. Now the item is open for discussion and questions from trustees. Seeing none, I will now ask trustees to use their voting cards in favor or opposed. Online, thank you. The motion is carried. We have two information items on the agenda this evening, and I'll first call again on General Counsel Cotter to present the report on the process for electing chairs and vice chairs to committees of the board.
Sorry, and thank you, Chair Miller, and through you. There was a request made at I believe it was at the last meeting, for some information to come forward on the process and the information that's provided around the election of chairs and vice chairs. So that's what we've included in the report, and it's there for your information and discussion.
Thank you, General Counsel Cotter. Are there any questions and comments from trustees? I recognize Trustee Edwards.
Thank you. And just having been around here, at one point in time, we did not, the only chairs and vice chairs we voted at the organizational meeting was the chair of the board, the vice chair of the board, and the vice chair standing, committee of the whole standing. The fact that we, and most of our committees, and I know other boards don't have chairs and vice chairs, but I think it's prudent to have chairs and vice chairs, basically in order to have basically succession planning, facilitate succession planning and all that stuff. So I think that's really good. The biggest thing about is the first year of a term. My concerns when we try to elect chairs and vice chairs at an organization meeting, other than the chair and the vice chair standing, is that for a trustee that is brand new to the role, basically getting their feet wet, and just looking at a chart of committee roles, it doesn't necessarily give them time to think about whether they want to be a leader of the committee, a committee or not. I think that most of our other committees, we elect the chair and vice chair at the first meeting that is held. I really think that's a good practice, as well as when it comes to the chair and the vice chair, I find it's not usual to have the whole board select who the chair of a committee is. I also would like to note there's also, I think it's in 4.7, I've made a note of it, where it actually says the chair can appoint for ad hoc committees the chair and the chair of the committee, which is contrary to some of the other things. But I really think that we should really look at where the chair and vice chair, that should be at the committee level when they have their first meeting, as far as that's concerned, other than the chair and the vice chair of the board and the vice chair of the standing. That gives a little bit more time for new trustees into the role, getting an understanding of, maybe a little bit more understanding of what their role is, what they're responsible for, and to whether they want to take on a leadership role at that point in time or not.
Thank you, Trustee Edwards. Is there any further comments from trustees? Seeing none, I'll turn to Council Cotter.
So I appreciate it's just here for discussion. So I think just to help frame it, the bylaws right now are permissive. It says, it contemplates that they'd be elected at the organizational meeting, but if not, they would be elected at committee level. But I think if there's a desire to change that, then I would suggest that the bylaws be amended so that staff have a clear idea of what's coming forward at the org meeting and what isn't, and as do trustees, so they know what elections are going to be held. So I think if there isn't an interest in moving forward with this, whether tonight or at some other point in the future, that consideration be given to formalizing that in the bylaws.
Thank you, Council Cotter. Any further questions and comments? Thank you. I'll turn it over once more to General Counsel Cotter to present the update on DDSB regulations report.
So in response to trustee inquiry, we provided a report just confirming the number of regulations that we still have left at the board to to rescind. So that's attached at Appendix A to that report. And just for the benefit of trustees who weren't here last time and may not appreciate the history of this, the board had, I think the report says more than 70, but my recollection is, I stand to be corrected, of course, if I'm wrong, but my recollection is we had 89 regulations. And the board gave direction to staff to stop using regulations just because it was a confusing term. We should either have policy that's adopted by the board or procedure that's within the realm of the director's authority. That we wouldn't have regulations anymore. So after we got that direction, we've whittled it down from 89 to 37. So the remaining 37 are there in Appendix A. And initially we got rid of some of the ones that were obviously sort of standalone and those sorts of things. But otherwise, they're being done as a policy or procedure is being revised. We deal with the regulation at that time, and we're trying to do those ones that have regulations first. But anyway, that's the current status where we're at, subject to any questions you may have.
Point of information for Trustee Cotter, for Council Cotter. Regarding the list that we have, I just wanted to know if this, for the list of the 37, is it over the course of the school year or is it ongoing? Could you clarify?
These are the regulations that are currently outstanding. We don't have I think typically what we try to do is have a sort of an agenda for the year in September as to which ones we're going to accomplish that year in terms of getting moved into policy, getting moved into procedure, and rescinding. So I think at this point in the year, we're not ready for the September schedule of cadence, but certainly there's some that I think are obviously going to be on that list in the first tranche, but so we don't have that set yet, Chair Miller, in terms of which ones are going to be up for review in the next school year.
Thank you, Council Cotter. Are there any other questions? I recognize Trustee Edwards.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, at this point in time, we might not know, but at one point in time, I would like to be able to see where we have basically a general schedule, or at least to say that we're going to tackle these, within the next whatever for public consultation, and they're actually listed on the website, so that people are aware that we are reviewing them, and then they can either contact whoever they want to as far as input as well. It's just again, it's just awareness of these policies that we are looking at, or these regulations we're turning into policies, and that they can have. And I know we do other feedback for, depending on the policy, we will go out when it comes to SECs or whatever, it'll be out there. But I think it's really important that we establish that kind of schedule in the future and put it out there so that people know that it's coming.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Miller, that's fair comments, Trustee Edwards, and happy to report that we have now hired the policy analyst position has now been filled, and that is exactly the type of work that we would be looking for the policy analyst to do. Get that schedule, get it public, work the website, get the stuff up, and work with this committee in getting a proper schedule and cadence for review.
Trustee Morton?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. A lot of work has gone into the agenda for tonight, so I would just like to say to staff, thank you. We appreciate your very strong efforts. Thanks.
Thank you. There's no further comments regarding this report. I'd also like to thank staff and thank the committee for a wonderful and successful school term. At this time, since there's no further business, can I please have a mover to adjourn this meeting? Thank you, Trustee Jackula. All in favor? Your meeting is now adjourned.